But today, a few of the national columnists with this story from Dennis Dodd, why we may be reaching a tipping point for the Power Five to break away from the FBS. This has been something that has been talked about for quite some time. University of Utah economist Ted Tatos asked to consider whether the coronavirus could impact a second consecutive NCAA tournament. This is from years ago. Paul, is this going to happen? You think this is going to happen?
I think it almost. I think it's got to happen. They have to be able to set rules. They've got to be able to enforce things in a different way. They've got to. Everything needs to change. The NCAA is not an effective institution in that there's so many things, and there's rules on top of rules, and then, we've just seen in the last couple of years with the way that they've either lost cases on rules that were not necessarily legal by the Constitution of the United States, like name, image, and likeness, and the fact that schools can own your name, in that. And then just if you look at recently, anytime you want to make an appeal, their decision is, no, that's the rule, and it's not like, well, I know the rule is written this way, but in the example of Tarleton State last week, the rule is written this way to prevent this specific incident, and you guys have blown far past that, and that's not even an issue. Sorry about that.
That's okay. It's just saliva.
So because of it, yes, they need to do it because they are operating at a big business level that the NCAA just isn't.
Ross Dellinger with a couple of tweets, and Craig, in your response on this. This is the first one. In the near future, power leagues will operate separately and share revenue with athletes as part of a reshaped NCAA, according to a Big Ten AD. Forced into action by the latest antitrust case, leaders are considering models for the great split. It's nuclear. And even this past weekend, Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, saying about 50 to 70 programs are dramatically different than the rest. I believe we should come up with a model in which we think differently about those schools.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that has been talked about for a long time. It's just maybe not had the right amount of fuel to propel it to actually taking place. But a lot of the quotes surrounding this saying within the next 5 years, there was another quote that I believe Charlie Baker may have had that said that there's 50 to 70 programs that operate at a certain level, and that indicated that those would potentially be where you'd see a split. I did see somebody put a list together of where you start to get into the territory of those schools, and guess who it is? It's UCF, it's Cincinnati, it's schools like that. And so where would that cutoff be? But I don't think this is just the wet dream of reporters who only want to go to big games every Saturday, even though I think that drives a lot of the reporting when it comes to the Power 2 and the realignment, is that guys don't want to come to Waco. They don't want to go to Manhattan. They want to be at Ann Arbor or Columbus every single week. I think there is definitely an element of that in some of the reporting. But I also think now at this point, there are so many lawsuits ongoing and battles that the NCAA is clearly going to lose, and money that they are going to lose, that they are basically up against the wall and have little to no choice, barring some miraculous life raft of caving and being forced to go to more of a distribution model that benefits the athletes, where it comes from the network TV deals in some cases, or various other pots of money. There are going to be those schools that are going to have to pay their players, not just, hey, you can pay them through NIL or you don't have to, but no, you're going to have to do it. They are going to be employees to some extent by definition of the law. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. I mean, that's just bottom line. And there's a lot of schools that we probably assume could do that won't be able to do that.
I agree with you.
So 50 to 70, is that being generous? I don't know. Maybe that's about the right sweet spot. Like I said, that was kind of the cutoff there with you started adding the AAC schools to the Big 12. That's kind of where that cutoff was. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a great surprise. It's also still very gray area and not black and white as to what this will look like or when. But within the next 5 years, I think that's safe to assume. And I think it's safe to assume the NCAA is going to take some more tail kickings in court, and they're going to have no choice but to change. And so you're going to be with the Joneses, or you're going to be more of the old school college football. That's kind of how I see it now. But obviously a lot to unwind here.
I'm going to just throw this out. This is just hypothetical. If, in fact, they'll say the number 70, and it could be 50, it could be less than that or a little bit more than that, but let's say it's 70. Do you think that everybody that's a Power 5 school right now is safe?
No, and for this reason. Everybody who's a Power 5 school is probably
plus Notre Dame.
Yeah, every school that's a Power 5 school could probably do it. Save for a couple. There's a couple out there that might be just clinging on to the bottom bar, like that. They're on a helicopter in like one of those movies trying to hang on. But I think there's also, Craig, you mentioned that schools that can't do it. I also think there's schools that won't want to, because there are schools that are going to say, okay, you're going to have to pay 85 scholarship athletes $45,000 a year based on the metric and like cost of living, and all the different things will have to go up, as the budget goes up, as they get more millions, and what a 16-team playoff could bring if they expanded to that, and how much television revenue and billions that they're going to have to share. And there's going to be some institutions that are just going to say, no, we're not going to do that because we don't believe in that. We're not going to do that. So they're going to just take their lumps and go to the next level because they don't have the alumni support for it. Nobody really cares. But then there'll be some that are going to stretch to their very limits because their people want it.
Yeah, and there's a lot in that article, to touch on various quotes and ideas that were part of that article, and mentions of meetings that have taken place here recently. But yeah, I mean, the new playoff coming down the pipeline with all the money that's going to have, and just the constant talk that we've had over the last few years about all of these court battles. I mean, this has all been shaping up into this. And I do think there's been some massaging, like I said, just the idea in general of, I don't care how we get there, but we almost like want to see a power two. And I don't think it's going to be quite that. I don't think it's just going to be limited to the two, but I do think it's going to be limited to those who are able to do it. I think that there will be some schools in the Big 12 or obviously in the ACC and, whatever the pack is, months down the line, that will still want to be a part of it and will do everything they can, like Paul said. But there will be others that, just going to be like, you know what, this isn't for us any longer. Who those schools are, I don't know. But not everybody's going to have the backing and the foundation and the money. Now, you can, when you start talking about these playoff payouts, and that'll help, ease some of that. But there's very clearly a split of some sort coming. And I think, the split itself is with the NCAA, at least at the top of the list. And that's what's talked about in this article, is that, basically the NCAA is just going to have to, reinvent itself. And will it even be the NCAA, or what would that even entail? But yeah, the college football landscape as we knew it, where it was just everybody kind of doing their thing and, let's add NIL into the picture, and the NCAA still controls everything. Those days are ending, guys. Like, those days are ending, and the courts are making sure that they're ending because they've got an onslaught of cases. It's not just one or two. It's like a handful of cases that they all stand to lose, and lose pretty easily. And that just opens the door to more and more of the way that we knew it to be, which wasn't always fair to the athletes. That era's gone. It's all about the athlete and them getting fair compensation, and schools having to pony up their millions and billions of dollars. And so that's where we're headed, and it's full steam ahead. It's just a matter of what that looks like, who's in charge of it, who's a part of it, and then for those that aren't, where does that leave them in the long run?
Yeah, I think there will be some. I think there might. I don't know if they will, but I do think there's probably a handful and a half of schools who are Power 5, even with the money that's generated, but whether they decide we're gonna drown even with the money that's incoming. And then there might be some that we think might not be able to handle it. Because of the money, they'll be able to stay and be a part of it. But it will be interesting what that number is. It's just a guess right now with what Ross Dellinger was saying. 50 to 70 schools might be the number. Some in the chat room say 70 is a great number. And if you're a Power 5 school, that's the number you want. If you're a Group of 5 team school, you want at least 70. And then, 50, of course, then all of a sudden you start to get some nut cutting going on.
70 would allow for a Boise State or a San Diego State or a school that's trying to move up to that level.
How about Liberty or James Madison?
A school that's trying to put forth the financial,
or Oregon State, Washington State, but they're a part of that 70
They're
right
already
now.
part of the 70, but one of those schools like that. So we'll see what happens. I think ultimately the NCAA even if this does happen and football breaks away, or is this football and like the Power Five just breaking away in general? And hopefully they won't mess up the basketball tournament. But
I don't know. I think that will be a separate entity.
So,
I think the NCAA might still control that or not. They're going to move forward with who they are. This is a football-related story right now.
Yeah, the NCAA needs to change. And football, you really do need to start treating football different when, look, just based on the fact that, your whole operational budget from softball for 5 years can be made from one football game. Like, honestly, Michigan, Ohio State can pay for their softball teams for several years just from Saturday. Now, granted, there's probably a little bit more than that, but if you wanted like the bare minimum, like the things they have to check off the box, like we got travel and uniforms and all this stuff, that game's going to do that. So why are we going to treat that game that's funding the whole athletic department like something that's funding none of the athletic department?
All right.
Maryland AD Damon Evans, for those that have read the story, you probably saw this, but he mentioned that he was at one point in time at AD that would say, we don't have the money to do this, or we don't have the money to do that. And then they signed that, it's hard to, I guess what his phrase was, make ends meet, or challenges to make ends meet at one point in time. And now, they, had to make decisions on money, but all of a sudden here comes a Big Ten TV deal where there's $1 billion that's suddenly being thrown out there just for TV, payments. And it's hard to sit there and say, sorry, we don't have the money for the softball locker rooms. Like, we're all tapped out. We just bought football. They're a brand new fountain with the colored lights and, the water park slide. We can't swing this for women's basketball. Like, there's so much money flowing now, you can't hide it. And they're trying to still hide it in some ways with the NIL effery that's going on with the bending of the lack of rules, and then what rules there are, the bending of those entirely. We know it's all a joke. It's a complete joke the way that it's being handled. And I think the Wild West thing gets kind of overused, but there's really not a better term to use than that. And so, I think that's something that could be curtailed by this, is you actually have an organization that comes together and you realize who all's on the same playing field, even though some will still make more than others. But that's a part of this new entity, and it's a part of, how the money gets distributed. And, a focus on football, but it was mentioned basketball here as well, that, that could be a game changer too. So, yeah, there's a lot to sort through, a lot of lawsuits, a lot of different ideas, but the basic gist of this is something's got to give here with all of the money that's going on, all of the lawsuits going on, and that is going to be most likely some type of grand break-off with however many schools, 50 to 70, that are going and operating probably under a different entity than the NCAA, with their own set of rules and their own in-house governance and all that comes with those things, paying players directly as employees, the works. That's all lining up right now.
Yeah, and again, it's just a matter of how many will make that break, and is it in the next 5 to 8, 10, 12 years? College football money's about to get even more, bigger, better, faster, and stronger. Now,